meet here in Helsinki. Your visit comes after the tragic events of last Tuesday. Once again, I want to express our solidarity for Poland and condolences for the lives lost. We must be very clear. Without Russia's war and targeting of civilians, also innocent Polish civilians would not have died. As we discussed today, we need to do everything we can so that Ukraine prevails. Poland is doing once again more than its part. You are not only giving weapons, helping displaced people from Ukraine and making humanitarian effort, you're also helping others to help Ukraine. Finland does its part too. This week we made the decision to deliver our 10th package of weapons and military equipment to Ukraine. This is the largest delivery up to date of the value of some 55 million euros. More will come. Our message is we will do whatever it takes. We discussed today also means to hold Russia accountable. Russia sees that it can violate international law with total impunity without any concerns about human suffering. We must find ways to make Russia pay for the damages it has caused. The atrocities and crimes committed in Ukraine by Russia will not go unpunished. We also discussed the future membership of Finland and Sweden in NATO. Here as well, I want to thank Poland. You have supported us through the ratification process. With the fast ratification of our NATO membership, Poland has shown also leadership for others. Still, 2 ratification remains. We discussed ways to find coordinated and common solutions to the problems of the energy market as well. We have common interest in forest policy and so many other important areas. There is a lot of potential for more cooperation among us on the EU agenda. So thank you so much for your visit, Mateusz, and now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Prime Minister. Dear Sanna, thank you for your invitation. First of all, I have to emphasize that our countries may lie on opposite sides of the Baltic Sea, but we speak with one voice when it comes to the geopolitical threats, in particular what is happening in Russia, in Ukraine. Both our countries are frontline states against Russia. This is a challenge that cannot be met alone. Recent days have proved that Europe is more united than ever. For the first time, the shock wave of war has reached the territory of the European Union. For 9 months, Russia opened chapter after chapter of its brutal onslaught, shelling hospitals and kindergartens, murdering prisoners of war, and killing civilians. On November 15th, Russia launched a massive missile attack on Ukraine. As a result, 2 Polish citizens were killed. Russia bears full responsibility for this tragic event. Russia is testing our determination, but we do not give in to threats. We do not give in to provocations. We stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. Special times call for special actions. When dozens of missiles are hitting Ukraine, we must hit Russia harder than it might expect. And here I would emphasize in particular one special element which was not yet used, and this is a potential confiscation of Russian assets. Assets of Russian
Wtedy będziemy bezpieczniejsi i możemy osiągnąć wiele razem.
They have to be responsible for this war. Assets cannot only be frozen. Frozen assets can increase in value in due course. We need Russian assets to be dedicated, used to rebuild Ukraine, and they have to feel this pain. Today, the whole world is paying for Russia's aggression, but it is Russia that must pay for all the crimes it has committed. Despite its many losses, Russia is still a huge threat, which is why we need further sanctions. Sanctions are effective and we must develop them, although they are not indifferent to our economies. This is why we also have to be strong, and we have to explain this to everybody, why the inflation, why the energy prices, why the macroeconomic crisis, and we have to speak with one voice here as well. And Sanna and I, we do speak one voice with regard to the prerequisites of this crisis, why this is happening. Ukrainian army is facing a formidable enemy alone, and Ukrainians must be constantly aware that they have Europe's massive support behind them. It's David versus Goliath, and this David has to know that we, the free world, we are going to defend them, and we are also ready to sacrifice more to defend Ukraine, because Ukraine is fighting for our freedom, for our security, and for our prosperity in the future. Poland has no doubt that Georgia 2008 and Crimean Peninsula 2014 was the beginning of a new era in our history. We had no doubt that Russian gas was as dangerous as Russian tanks. We had no doubt that the hybrid attack on the Polish-Belarusian border was a prelude to Russia's actions. Both our countries stand up to those threats. Poland has built a wall on the border with Belarusian regime, and we are going to build a barrier with the Polish-Russian border to Kaliningrad region. And I know Finland is also thinking about some barriers, some walls with Russia as well. The level of political class can be seen in moment of threat, moment of crisis. This is why it's so important how we, the European Council, the European Union, react to what is happening in Ukraine. A united society and united politicians is the great strength of any nation. The security of our border is not a local issue. It has a global dimension. NATO is the most powerful defense alliance in history, but the strength rests on the strength and solidarity of all the states. And this is why it's so important that Sweden and Finland joins NATO so quickly, and we fully support your efforts in joining NATO, Sanna, and we will do utmost to convince all those who have not yet ratified their legislation about Finland's accession to NATO. The Russians want to break the Ukrainians in order to open the way to Europe. So the Russian bear was stopped by the Ukrainians, but we need to weaken this bear so it cannot lift its paw. Time is not our ally, so we must act quickly, both on sanctions and on support for Ukraine. Russia wants winter on its side, but there is a country in modern history that knew how to use winter against Russia, and this was Finland some decades ago. The Finns understand the Eastern threat much better than Western countries, and I believe that they know how to unite against it. I therefore thank you, Madam Prime Minister, so much for being partners in this fight for Europe's security, in this fight for Europe's future. We must fend off Russian threats and cruelty once and for all. We can do this only when we are united and if we are focused on key geopolitical risks and dangers, and all the secondary issues of yesterday are put aside. Together we are stronger, and together we are safer, and together we can achieve more. Thank you, Sanna.
Thank you. We move on to questions. Please.
Hi, my name is Karol Darmoros. I'm from the Polish radio. So, a question to Prime Minister Marin. Following NATO's Secretary General visit to Turkey, and your government talks with Ankara, do you see any potential breakthrough regarding Finnish accession to NATO? And to Prime Minister Morawiecki, do you plan to talk with Prime Minister Orban to speed up the ratification process? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. There is yet 2 countries remaining of the
Dziękuję za to pytanie.
Those are Hungary and Turkey.
Są jeszcze nadal 2 kraje, które nie wykonały ratyfikacji, Turcja i Węgry. Oczywiście rozmawiamy z 2 tymi krajami. Węgry obiecały ratyfikację jeszcze w tym roku. Może w tym roku, może na początku następnego, ale w każdym razie Węgry obiecały ratyfikację jeszcze w tym roku, jak najszybciej. Turcja powiedziała, że nie ma problemu z Finlandią, ale ma pewne problemy ze Szwecją. Ale chcielibyśmy wejść do NATO wspólnie. Wspólnie złożyliśmy wnioski i chcemy wspólnie wejść do aliansu. Mamy wspólną atmosferę geopolityczną i bardzo ważne jest przyjęcie naszych krajów razem. Za kilka dni pan premier Orban i ja spotykamy się w formacie wyszehradzkim. Jestem pewien, że wspólnie z naszymi przyjaciółmi ze Słowacji i Czech
vis-à-vis Finland and Sweden, of course, as well, because we believe that this is critically important to increase the security of eastern flank of NATO and security of our region.
Next question.
Finnish national broadcast YLE Terhi Toivonen, question for Prime Minister Morawiecki about this stray anti-aircraft missile. What new can you tell us about the investigation, and perhaps has Ukraine agreed or said that it was their missile?
Well, no, not yet, and let all the prosecutors and all the experts work on this. We have invited Ukrainian experts to the investigation, and we have also invited international American NATO experts to this investigation as well. We have some evidence. We have gathered some evidence in the form of some films from the cameras of border guards, but they are not indicating with 100% certainty at where the missile was fired from. So we still have to gather new evidence, and the investigation will last for a little while. We want it to be as transparent as possible, and in particular, we want our Ukrainian friends and partners to be convinced and sure that the version is certain. So we invited their experts for this investigation too.
The next question from the second row.
Grzegorz Urbanek from TV Polsat. I have a question to finish.